This episode may contain language or discussions that may be offensive or triggering. Refer to the episode summary for details. Welcome to On Her Terms Defined. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and today I'm with two therapists, my buddy, Dr. Danielle Frazier, and my other buddy, Tessie Amos III. And so Danielle and I go way back, almost 20 years to my first job out of college, working in medical publishing. And I've known her since then, and she's one of my dearest friends. And so we're going to be calling her Dr. Danny to celebrate her and acknowledge her achievement, even though it makes her very, very, very uncomfortable. And Mr. Tessie and I work together at Families and Father Support Center based in St. Louis, Missouri. And Tessie, I think you were facilitator over the Training to Work program and job developer while you were there, weren't you?
Correct.
Okay. And people outside of Missouri, or people who are outside of fatherhood program and fatherhood initiatives, may not be familiar with his name, but those of you who work in this space will recognize the name of the person I'm about to mention. And we cannot have a conversation about Black fathers without acknowledging him. But last week we lost a giant in Missouri and just in Black families and fatherhood. And his name was Halbert Sullivan. And he was the founder and CEO of Families and Father Support Center based in St. Louis. And Tessie and I had the honor and privilege of working with him and being a resource to the community and all the fathers and families that we serve there. So I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged him and just, acknowledge that the legacy of his work continues through what Tessie continues to do, and also through Danielle's work, because we will be talking about her dissertation, which focused on the impact of fatherlessness on Black women. So I gave that really long introduction to say that the focus of this discussion is to highlight the importance of Black fathers in the lives of Black women. We will also talk about ways to maintain and develop healthy co-parenting relationships so that we can improve the consistency and relationships and presence of Black fathers in the lives of their children. Although we recognize that Black fathers are important to both their sons and daughters, because most of this audience is comprised of females, we're going to really emphasize and focus on the impact of and the value of Black fathers on Black women. So I want to first start our discussion by asking both of you, what was your motivation for getting involved in this subject area? Danielle, you chose this topic for your dissertation, and Tessie, you chose to work at Families and Father Support Center. So both of you had an interest in exploring the value of Black fathers. And so what was kind of the motivation for both of you to do that?
I guess that means I'm going first. For me, it was personal because I lost my father when I was 8 years old. He was murdered, and it really shaped and framed a lot of my interest in this topic. I obviously lived through it and learned the hard way of some of the impacts of not having a father growing up. And so even as I overcame a lot of the obstacles that I did face, once I got to this point in education and started researching and seeing what was out there, I thought I could contribute more to that topic because it is very personal for me. So that was my interest, and it continues to be an interest.
Thank you for sharing that.
Much like Dr. Danny, it's personal for me as well. My parents divorced when I was a youngster. The actual divorce happened when I was at age 16, but they separated when I was age 10. The impact that it had on me with my father being absent, who mind you he was a darn good man, but him just not being there every day. And then as I got older, him being there less and less, I saw how I was impacted on that. I remember going to my baseball games, and my best friend's father was at every single game, screaming and yelling and cheering his son on. And I just remembered a certain emptiness that I had, knowing that as much as I love the game of baseball, that my father wasn't in the crowd cheering me on. And just and it would be several other incidents throughout life and growing up that I would wish that he was there and he wasn't. And it was because he lived out of town and he was working. He wasn't a, a deadbeat, if you will. He just wasn't there. And so the impact of that was great on me. And then I realized that as I became an adult, how the type of father that I was going to be when I had my chance, I had to kind of pull bits and pieces to get that recipe together. And then, and I thank God that I finally was able to do so. And according to my own children, I'm doing quite well. But I also look back. I had an opportunity to look back and see other fathers struggling, especially the younger fathers. And so, just like Dr. Danny, I thought I could have a greater impact if I worked directly with them. And I always take a hands-on approach to my work, which is why I ended up at then Father Support Center and now Families and Father Support Center, because it allowed me to, to put my hands out there and hold hands with these men and encourage them to be better fathers and to go ahead and just get involved in their children's lives at some point, somehow, in any capacity that they could. And as far as my practice goes, I just feel like if I can help Black men, then I can help them be better fathers. If I help them be better fathers, then they can be better husbands, better heads of families, and then they can turn around and produce better children. So in the end of it all, it's all about producing and having healthier, happier children that look like me and you.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
it's not just about just that one individual. That's what's so amazing about that work, so to speak, or that calling, because when you impact one father, and I started to go back and look at the annual reports for Father Support Center, because I know they actually specify in there how many clients they have provided services to, and then how many families were impacted by that. So you may have one family, or one father, but that impacts potentially hundreds of people when you start talking about their entire family and the community impacts.
And
So
generations, people who aren't even born yet.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, which is why it's so interesting for me, when you hear all these, you mentioned the stereotype of like the deadbeat. And when you hear all these stereotypes or just these things thrown out there, but when you do the research, Black men are actually the most engaged and active fathers. And I think that it's worth exploring, what are those barriers that sometimes prevent them from being consistently engaged and active. And in your work, and for this is for both of you, but in your work and in your life experiences, what do you think some of those barriers are that prevent men from being engaged and active fathers?
I honestly, I believe it's a lack of passion. When you don't take the time to plan a family, when you haven't gotten, so to say, all of your ducks in a row, it can get hard, and that's a lot of stress. And society has created an avenue in which men can just bail, which is why I draw so much respect to women and mothers, because they tend historically to be there. And sometimes, even when they don't have much, they're still just there. And that's the most important thing. And so I think that society has created situations by which men believe it's okay for me to go get myself together and just come back later, because we are so dependent on what mothers do and what women do. And we know all too well that they can handle it. So we leave them to it. And so that's kind of what I want to change. That's the portrait that I would like to repaint. And for men to understand that, no, you have to be there as well. We don't know our impact until later, and our children are acting out, until later, and our daughters are in abusive relationships, or they're allowing themselves to be misused by some other misguided soul. That's when we truly realize our impact. And many times it's just too late. And so, but if we'll stick around and just be there, then we can materialize the impact that we should have had all along. And so we have to break the societal norms that says that, well, mom has it, I just leave with my baby mama, she got it. You know what I'm saying? That's what we gotta stop. And we have to realize just how important we are. and it takes metal to sharpen metal. And so that's why I specifically like and love to work with men, because I understand that impact. I understand it from being left behind, and I understand it from standing there. And I also understand it from standing in the gap, because I'm the head of a blended family. And so one father stepped out so I could step up and step in. And so, and I've created an impact with my own children that I think is wonderful. And I know that this thing can work if we just stand there, if we're just there. Many times with my own children, all I had was the ability to be there, and it worked.
It's interesting you said that. So one of the things that, they have the women's panel at Families and Fathers Support Center. And I've participated in the women's panel recently. So what happens in the curriculum for the program, I think that's week 6, is it? In week 6, they have what they call the women's panel. And it's an opportunity for the men in the program to ask questions and get honest responses and input from women that they don't have intimate relationships or, familiarity with. And there's a preset list of questions. But it's really interesting because one of the questions that's on the list, and we usually cover all of them, but one of the questions on the list is, what's more important from a father, money or time? And I think that's an important question for men to ask, and important thing to discuss, because a lot of times, and I've heard it just one-on-one, I'm sure you've heard it as well, Tessie, from clients that, or when we were both at Father Support Center, but you would hear, I didn't go around because I didn't have any money. I knew that their mom was going to be upset with me. It was their pride sometimes, but then also just that desire to show up in the way that they couldn't show up at that particular time. And so what would both of you say to men, and for men who are concerned that I don't have the money? So me just going over there to give them my time is like, what's the value in that? And what would you also say to mothers who are like, he's not giving me any money, his love and his hugs not gonna pay this electric bill, it's not gonna put food in the fridge, because we say that, like, you can love me all day, but what's they gonna do for me? That's not feeding them, that's not clothing them. So what do you say to the fathers who are concerned, I don't have anything to offer because I don't have any money? And what do you say to the mothers who are like, stay over there until you can put in on something?
I would say that, first of all, to what Tessie said, men and fathers are super important in the lives of their children, period. It gets complicated when the men are toxic or, dangerous, and just, it's a different kind of conversation to have, where mothers really don't want them in the kids' lives for fear of, whatever they can bring negative into the kid's life. But aside from that population, I think that sometimes as women, we can be part of the issue for just what you said, right? So do I think men should financially support their children? 100%. That, like, even if you didn't plan it, I mean, here we are, right? My parents were teenagers when they had me. So, and interestingly enough, I found out my cousin, he used to play for SLU basketball back in the 70s when I was born. And he was just telling me this the other day, how my dad would come to the game with me in a diaper bag, which was funny because I never knew this, right? I went to SLU for undergrad, and I was thinking, who knew that I would end up, attending this school when I was just a little 2-year-old walking around campus. He shared that with me just last week. I never knew that. And so here my dad is, a teenager with a diaper bag, taking me to see his nephew play basketball, right? So he was a teenager. I mean, not knowing probably what to do because he's young. So it is complicated, but it can be done, right? And for me as a girl, that meant everything to me. I mean, even though I only had him for a short time, I was a daddy's girl, not just because he brought me things. And even the things that he bought me, I was more fascinated that it represented how much he cared, right? Because he would pay the little kids to get off the swing so I could swing. But I mean, he paid him like 25 cents, right? Which was a lot of money back then. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. But it really wasn't the money. It was the fact that I knew he cared so much that he would do anything so I could swing. That wasn't about the bills, right? So from a kid's perspective, it was just about him being there and wanting me to have the best and my little kid, my understanding. That's what I felt like. So from the kids' perspective, I think that women and my parents, they weren't married at that point. They got married later, but at that point, whether he was bringing money in or not, I assume so, but I really don't know because as a kid, it didn't matter. So I think that as women, we have to allow the dads in to give what really the kid needs the most, which is him and his affirmation and his encouragement and his love. Yes, he should pay. I'm not saying he shouldn't, but maybe he doesn't have a lot to give. You know, maybe he just financially isn't able to give a lot. Maybe he should give something, but don't withhold that from him, women. And men, don't stay away. If you have the option, if you have a woman who's willing to let you, you know, come around, be around. It means the world. My fondest memories of my dad are not what money he gave my mom or whatever. I don't even know, you know, but it was him being with me and giving me the love and affirmation that I needed. So I think the love is the most important to the child, unless the mother has somehow convinced the child otherwise. But in most cases, just kids want to be loved. Like what Tessie said, they want you at the game screaming and yelling, telling them good
Mhm.
job. That's what we
Yeah.
want. So if you got to choose, I would say be there. And women, you know, if he's willing to be there, I mean, let him be there for the child's sake.
Yeah.
Right. So, so I'm gonna say this, and I don't know how well it's gonna go over in the end, but here we go. This is what I warned you guys about. So here's the deal. So there's this thing that because most of I don't know if you ladies understand that we start getting taught from an early age that as a boy child who will one day be a man that it's my responsibility to go out and provide.
Hmm.
I have to go out into the world and I have to bring provisions back for my family, and that's my fiduciary responsibility. Even though I'll have a helpmate, which
Hmm.
is the whole idea of the family is to have a helpmate, but it's ultimately my responsibility. Anytime you are put in a situation where you cannot handle your responsibilities, then it takes a chink out of your armor. It takes a little bit away from you as a person, and so the more that gets taken away from you, then the less you are willing to do. And so what I would say to men is to understand this. Money is just one of the provisions that you're responsible for. So I'm not here to relieve you of your
Hmm.
responsibilities in any kind of way, but I
Hmm.
am here to reorder those responsibilities and put them in their proper places. Money is just one of those provisions.
Hmm.
You have an equal responsibility to your children, your sons and your daughters, just like mom. Her responsibility was to carry this child, safely deliver this child to this planet. After that, then everything becomes equal and fair at that part. And so you have to spend time with your child. Your child needs your time just as much as they need mom's time. They need to know how you tick and how you move because they are absolutely unadulterated 50% of who you are.
Hmm.
They're going to move like you move, think like you think, feel how you feel. If you're not there to answer those questions, then they go unanswered because mom can only answer it from one perspective,
Hmm.
hers. But there's a 50% perspective that's missing. And this is why you see confused young girls out here and confused young boys because 50% of how they move and how they tick is unexplained to them due to the absence of that father. Mothers, I would say to you, don't put your adult problems on your child. And now this is the part that I don't think is going to go over too well, but I'm gonna say it anyway.
Mhm.
Uh, you knew he didn't have money when you laid with him,
Hello.
when you gave him
Ouch.
when you
We are
gave him.
all about accountability on here. So
Yeah.
bring it. Bring it.
And again, I'm not here to offend anybody, but let's
Hmm.
keep it real, okay?
Hmm.
You
Mhm.
knew that, and when it was fun and games before that hammer came down, and
Mhm.
you ended up pregnant, it was all
Mhm.
fun and games.
Yep.
Hmm.
Okay, you knew that he does, so don't do it. Don't turn on him now.
Hmm.
Continue to accept what he has to offer.
Hmm.
You started accepting it, continue to accept it because it's going to be better for your child.
Mhm.
But again, if this person is toxic, if this person is dangerous, if you was living on the wild side and you just carrying a child for full term or part term and you got a child here safely and that grew you up hyper speed and you now truly understand safetyness and what that means and this is not a safe person, then I get you.
Mhm.
But get somebody to help fill that gap. Get another man involved, perhaps your father if he's there. If you have an older brother, a quality uncle, get somebody involved because you're going to need that balance. That balance is what's going to help these children get together. If you can be in support of that man so that he can get himself together, continue to do that. Keep an open eye so that if in fact he wakes up like you did, later rather than sooner, he can now come back and continue or start being an impact in his child's life. All is not lost, but we have to get to the part where we expect one another to do the right thing for the right reasons. And children are that reason. Children change everything. They did not ask to be part of your relationship. You kind of forced them into it. And since they're here, then let's just take really good care of them. And yes, they need both. They need both. They need what that man has to offer. And you don't want to see that when they're 15 and 16 and now they're a little bit out the gate on you. You want to get that started early so they can at least understand who they are. If you understand who you are, you can be expected to perform a little bit better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. We are all about accountability on here because the truth may hurt, but what is truly empowering and life changing is when you recognize your own power and your decisions. It doesn't feel good to recognize that you chose poorly, but it will feel better when you recognize that because then you can do different moving forward. So it's anybody who's hurt by that. That means it hit close to home, and that means you need to dig. What hurts you is something that you need to dig into. So if it's offensive, I don't really care about something like that because accountability is powerful. People have to reframe that. Just because somebody says something that makes them feel uncomfortable and it's like they want to shut it down, but that's not going to help you. That's not going to help heal you. It's just like, and now this is what's going to offend and trigger people. So I'm going to say this one. And Danielle and I have talked about this before. So one of my big pet peeves is on Father's Day when all the women, give themselves a Father's Day shout out. And I understand that there are a lot of women who were super mom and did it all. But I think that in taking that day over, first of all, you're highlighting the negative, which I don't find productive because you're highlighting the absent fathers, and the day is not about them. The day is about the fathers who were present. But the other thing is you're feeding into this concept that children don't need both parents. Because if both of you have indicated there's value, we get something from both. And so to say that I'm the mother and the father, happy Father's Day to me too, is really just, what is that saying to sons? What is that saying to other men who are in that space where they aren't quite there of being able to show up the way that they want to, but they're hearing this perpetuation that my absence has no impact either way. And I don't know that that is the message that we want to send. And so I think that we always have to try to be cognizant or aware of what are our words, what are our behaviors and traditions teaching our children? Because as young boys and girls, when you hear mom say, I'm the mother and the father, that is telling girls that you don't need to have a man for your children, that you don't need to have that you don't need to try to have a partnership so that child has that value from both parents. And you're also teaching the son that they don't need me. I'm dispensable.
That's it. And that's the mentality that when I say society perpetuates a free avenue for men to leave, that's part of that perpetuation.
Yeah.
We make these boys from very young ages feel like they're not a necessity and they're not needed. And that makes it easier for them to leave when it gets hard. It's hard to stay. And I get it. And this is why I have so much respect for women and mothers, because like I said before, they just stay. And that's not an easy thing to do. They were there for colicky babies. They were there when Pampers got low. They sacrificed meals so that the child or the children can eat. You know, and all of the things, we could just go on and on about the things, the importance of Black motherhood. And so I get it.
Yeah.
All I'm saying is that fatherhood is equally important, and we should embrace it. We should expect it, and we should close that block of where men feel like they can leave. And we have to start teaching these young boys exactly how important they are, because remember, genetically, we're 50% of each parent.
Yeah.
So if one parent is great and the other parent is a piece of shit, then I'm half great and I'm half a piece of shit.
Exactly.
So what are you really wanting to teach your children? Like, you can't do that. There's other ways to get that same meaning across, and you should be acknowledged. When you have to carry the torch for two, you should be acknowledged. But Father's Day is just simply not that day. That day was actually a month before, and it came before that. But that day was in May, and if you didn't get recognized enough on that day, then let's find another day to get you recognized.
Right.
Not on Father's Day. Like you said, that's highlighting the negative. That's an unnecessary shot. And it's an unnecessary shot, and we don't have to do that. You are great, and if nobody told you that, I'll tell you every day, all day, 364 days of the year. But on the day that's been set aside for fathers, you shall not eat first.
Oh, not your day, not your day. And I had that debate. I go back and forth with family on that, because they'll call and tell each other, Happy Father's Day and stuff like that. And I acknowledge Mother's Day because I'm a fur mom. I have 2 fur babies, and so people will call and tell me Happy Mother's Day. I'm like, don't. No, let's not. Yeah, I know we joking because it's the cats, but yeah, I don't feed into that. So let's not do that. And before we talk about, because all of this goes back to how we need to nurture healthy co-parenting behaviors. But before we talk about that, I really want to make sure the audience understands how valuable, how important Black fathers are on Black girls. So I want to talk a little bit about Dr. Danny's dissertation, where you did research on this and highlight some of your findings in terms of the value and impact of Black fathers. And Tessie, feel free, I want you to chime in as well, because you have a lot of real world insights on this topic as well. So let's talk a little bit about, like, what's the real value and impact of fathers not being present, and also what we know, what are some of the benefits of fathers being present?
Ooh, that's a loaded question.
I know we could have spent like 2 hours talking about that, but if
yeah, it's a lot, but in general, just to be specific and considering time, the what you said about Mother's Day and Father's Day is interesting, and we have had that conversation. And I just normally let you just express yourself because you are passionate about it. And I honestly had not really thought about it a lot until you brought it to my attention. It just wasn't anything I really paid attention to, because I don't really buy Father's Day cards. And so it's just that day just kind of comes and goes.
Yeah.
Right. So like I tell myself Happy Father's Day, but we just never got into the card thing. So when you said that, the thing about what you find in research is, as much as mothers do, and obviously my mother ended up raising me the rest of my life without my dad. So like you, Tessie, I give all the credit to my mom, my grandmother, the women, and, even the other men in my life. But just specifically, you talk about the strength of women and what women do. But women cannot replace fathers. It's just not designed that way. They can close gaps as far as they can go out and work and make extra money, something that a father would contribute. They can go to the games and cheer the kids on, something that a father would do, but they cannot replace their role. It's just not possible, because mothers and fathers, as Tessie talked about, the DNA and what they come together and bring, they bring different things emotionally to children, right? So even though it's not just a cut in half, what every mother brings this or every father brings this, there are some distinct differences. And so in researching, you find that for girls, their dad is like their first idea of what a man is, and his strength and what he brings, and like Tessie talked about, his provision and how he cares for you, and affirms you and lifts you up, and all these things that little girls want, right? And so when you don't have that as a little girl, what I found in my research specifically is that your self-esteem can be impacted. I mean, we can talk about it, and if most women are honest, it's a big deal, because your dad is the one who tells you how beautiful you are. He takes you out on your little date, or he runs the boys away, or all this stuff that dads do to protect you, to provide for you emotionally. A mom can't give that, even though my mom may have told me how beautiful I was, and thank you, mom, and thank you, grandma. There was still a void, because when the little boys come trying to talk to you, you don't really have a good perspective of what's really happening, unless you have had a dad who's already told you how beautiful you are. So when little Johnny comes, you're like, oh, okay, my dad already told me that, whatever. So it's harder to run game on a girl who's secure in who she is because of her dad. Moms can help their daughters be secure, yes, but dads bring a different dynamic, particularly for girls who are going to one day end up dating males like their dad. They bring that perspective that a mom just doesn't have, because she too is a girl, right? So in my research, I found that self-esteem, how women attach in relationships, those were impacted by not having fathers. You also find in other research that I found, not just in my study, but you find that education, women sometimes when their father is absent, education isn't as much as a priority. So because of that, then financially, their job perspectives, their careers are impacted. Every aspect of life is impacted when their father is not in the home. I can't find one. I mean, there were even some physical aspects to how women developed as girls physically, as opposed to dad. Dads not being there when dads were there. People have done all types of studies on how fatherlessness affects girls. And so without a dad, something's going to be broken. And not even just absent, a father who's not equipped, right? So if you have a verbally abusive dad, he's causing problems, so it's something about having an emotionally healthy, present, physical dad that nothing else can compare to. So anything other than that, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems in how girls respond emotionally in every area, how they respond relationally in every area is impacted by their father not being there. And some of that is directly also linked to the mom, right? Because if the dad is absent, then the mom is not 100%. And so then how she treats the child ultimately impacts that child's emotional well-being as well. So it's all interconnected. So when family was designed, there was a reason why they were both in the picture. And so if you take the dad out, you really lose a lot. With the dad in, girls are more confident. Girls, you can find studies about how they soar in their education and their choices with partners and careers, and even just their physical health. Everything can be upward when their dad is there. You take him out, any area of life that you point to, you can find a potential, flaw in that area of their woman's life. In my study, I specifically did it with older women, because there's a lot of research that talks about young girls, children, teenagers. And so my study went up to like 55. And so you have women who had fatherlessness at some point in their lives that still have issues, because if you don't deal with them, I mean, they don't just magically go away. That's why I love what Tessie said about it's never too late. Like men, you know, find your children, find your father. I mean, it's never too late to build something. Obviously, if you're an adult, he can't be a part of your development, but he can still connect with you in places in your life. Because I've had male role models who came throughout my life, even in my 30s. My pastor, we had this real interesting conversation, and he said some things that I didn't even know I needed from a father figure. And I was whole grown with a mortgage, and you know, my adult life was well into play, but there were some things that he said to me that added, I didn't even know I needed. And so it's never too late. And even though he's not my biological father, he stood in that role in that moment, and it helped me through that space in my life. So I mean, we need fathers. They're not dispensable. And moms, as good as we are as women, we just can't replace what they're built to give us as women.
And then it's an enormous burden as well, because I do want to know, and I'm gonna let you interject, Tessie, but I want to point out also one of the things that we talk about a lot as women is just the burden of carrying everything.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a single mom and you don't have that other component, that other partner, you're probably having to work longer hours or multiple jobs just to make ends meet. You know, when you're overwhelmed because the kids are all pulling at you, life is pulling at you, you know, who do you go and cry to? Who do you go and talk to? You have friends and people outside the home, but it's nothing like having somebody in there
Mm-hmm.
that can be there, walk through that with you. And so that's something else that I don't think that we acknowledge enough,
Mm-hmm.
because we highlight and we celebrate being a strong woman all the time, but being a strong woman is killing Black women. We are dying of heart disease
Mm-hmm.
and all these other things that can be linked to stress and inflammation because we're carrying way too much. So in addition to fathers being a necessity, it's like, yeah, women are superheroes, moms are doing all these things, but at what cost?
Mm-hmm.
And thank you also for mentioning that even if the biological father is not in the picture, there are many men who can be, for lack of a better word, like surrogates or stand-ins. Like any good man will do, you
He
know.
has something
So
to offer.
yes, they can. Tessie, what were you about to say?
It's just all about balance. You know, if you a lot of things can work when they're out of balance. You take a car, if it's out of alignment, then it's out of balance, but it still works. You can still get from A to B. But
Mhm.
then when it's out of balance, there is other parts of the car that are now being stressed because they're having to compensate for this lack of balance. And so it's the same thing in the family structure, and breaking it down, it's the same thing inside of your child, inside of your daughter. You're raising her out of balance. She's out of balance. And so, although she's functioning, she's not functioning optimal.
Mm-hmm.
And even if she can go and establish and accomplish some great things, she didn't do it optimally. And like you said, that's coming back when she get in her 30s, 40s, and 50s. That's coming back as heart disease. That's coming back as high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and all of these other ailments that we get, arthritis, psoriatic arthritis, and things of that nature that have stressed us out. They're actually worrying the crown of their hair out their head,
Yeah.
and you know, going bald and stuff like that, you know. And so we have to be careful that we don't force our children to work in non-optimal situations. And so that balance is extremely important, and you want to have that as much as you can. If we can spend that kind of time on cars,
Hmm.
you know, ladies, have you ever tried to walk in a heel and one was broke? You can still get there, but that's
Take them
terrible.
both off. Take them
You
both
rather,
off.
you rather take them off and walk down streets that you don't know who did what to.
Exactly.
It's difficult, and it's near impossible, and it puts too much stress on your body to continue to try to walk with one heel on and one heel off. But we have our children operating and living with imbalance, so we
Yeah.
can't continue to do that. We can't continue to value our Dodge Chargers and things of that nature. And it's not just on the women. Let's not just pretend that the women are keeping men away. Men, equally, you have a responsibility to provide balance for your children. Get on back in there, man. Take your Dodge Charger, ST, SRT, drive on over there real fast and spend some time with your children, man. Help them get back in balance. It's extremely, extremely important that you're just there. If you don't have money and you don't have things, man, just be there and you watch the impact. You know, but we have to get men to start believing in themselves. We have to get them to believe that their value is important and their value adds balance. And if their value adds value to their children, it's your responsibility how your children turn out. Not your baby mamas. You don't get to disappear and then come back mad because your children didn't turn out right. Get on back in there, get in the game, you know, get in the game right after this timeout. Get back in the game and shoot again. Why? Because shoot or shoot, man. Let's go back.
I want us to close out with some tips for the audience. So we'll start with women. So what tips would you give to women to help develop a healthy co-parenting relationship with the father of their children?
Healthy co-parenting tips.
So if there, I know, and that's a whole nother subject that could go like really for hours. But if people, they have short attention spans. So
yeah, you know, I mean, the main thing to me is that you let the dad be a part, right? If he's a, you know, decent person, and you know, and when I say decent, I don't mean to minimize, but I mean he's just normal, just like you, right? Because I think sometimes we want the dad to be like a superstar and the woman can just be okay, you know, but he has to like, you know, climb big heights to be allowed into the kid's life, almost like perfect. Well, you know, he's probably not going to be perfect, like, but neither are we as women, right? So first is to allow him in. And I think that if you can have a third party, because I think sometimes it's difficult for, you know, when it's a contentious situation, particularly to really come to terms of what's going to be best for the child. But no matter if you can do it together, if you can do it with a third party, focus on what's important for the child. You know, the biggest tip I can give you is think about the child. You know, one of the things that I think sometimes we forget is what it's like to be the child. And so if you're going to co-parent, you want to come together, allow him in, and you want to focus on what is best for the child. Not what's best for you, not because he got a different girlfriend or not because she got another boyfriend and he can do it, and none of that. And I don't want her around my kid. And, you know, what's best for the kid. You know, maybe he can have two mamas and two dads. I mean, like, is it really that serious? Kids know who their real mom is. I mean, sometimes we just do extra, right? That kid know you're the mom. I mean, and if he got a girlfriend that's gonna treat the kid right, let him go be with the dad sometimes. The kid's not gonna be confused that you're the mom. And, you know, so I think sometimes we're focused on everything but the child. And as Tessie said, that's what we really need to be focused on, because we miss it. But kids are an opportunity to change that. That's why when he was talking about fathers, the generations can change. You know, we come from generations of all kinds of stuff, but all it takes is one generation to do something different. So sometimes the child is that representation of doing something different. So come together and do what's best for the child and stop, you know, picking at the man or picking at the woman. It's really not about you and him anymore, as it is about what you all can do to raise a healthy child, spirit, soul, and body.
Exactly. One of the things I learned at working at Families and Fathers Support Center is that fathers, you have rights. You have inalienable rights, and you have to invoke those rights. And again, this is where we get caught up on money. I don't want child support being taken out of my check. She's not taking child support now, so I'm not going to push the envelope because I don't want to be destroyed by the child support system. I don't want my finances ate up like that. Then what you're, in essence, what you're saying is that your, and I'm not shameless plug, but your warehouse paycheck is more important than your child, because those fathers who have resources, those fathers who have careers that are out there are making a bag, if you will, they're not concerned about that. They go ahead and pay child support, and it bothers them too. It gets on their nerves too, but they do it so that they can have time with their children. You have to make that sacrifice. You have to make the necessary sacrifice, and you have inalienable rights. So you don't have to stand on the sideline and say, well, she won't let me see my children. She won't let me come around. It's your responsibility to put yourself in a position to where don't you want your children to be safe? And if you're not living someplace safe, don't you want to be safe? Get yourself someplace safe. Step up, acquire something for yourself, be it an apartment or whatever it is. Clean that room up at your mama house then, and get your children over there with you. Stop making excuses. And so be it. If you're not making much money, then child support can't take much money, man. Get on over there and spend some time with your children. Mothers, I get your frustration, but you have to stop when you think you're taking it out on the would-be absentee father because you can't be in a relationship with him, or you don't even want to be in a relationship with him. When you think you're taking it out on him, you're not. You're actually taking it out on your child. You're punishing your child for your poor decisions, and you got to stop that part. You got to realize the importance of having two parents in a child's life, and that your child is going to be better after having two active parents, right? And so you gotta get involved. And many times that boy mama will help him stay straight. It's just that you piss her off about her son too, and so she's a little angry. And well, forget that heifer, but we got to cut all that out. You know what I'm saying? You can get his mama on him. Most of us still respect what our mamas tell us to do. Even the thuggiest of us goes and take mama trash out when it's time. So we got to do whatever we got to do to help our children become better. And in the process of your children becoming better, you can become better. And we just need to be better, man. We all we have. We all we have. We have to look out for and protect one another. Man, I know most of the time when you hear me speak, it sounds like I'm coming across your head, and I am to a certain degree. But I love you, brother. Brother, I love you. I care about you. I respect you. And I just need you to be better. You have to be better. And you don't need anybody helping you do that, because you already have the ability to do so. Just go be there.
Yeah, and as a girl who wish she had her dad, dads, don't unnecessarily let your daughters grow up without you. I mean, my dad was taken, right? But you, in a lot of ways, are choosing not to be there. So, do something different, do something better for the little girls out here who need their dads. They need their dads. Even if you're not perfect, she needs her dad.
Thank you. I have nothing to add to that. Yeah, thank you. Where can people find or follow the two of you? I know both of you have your own practices. I will include their names and websites on the She Confidential episode page, and it'll also be in the YouTube notes and on your podcast app notes. But if both of you would highlight your name, practice, and if you have social media handles, those things, so the audience knows where to find you.
Well, me,
Dr.
it's
Dan
funny because I know me and social media is kind of like, I love social media. I'm just never really there. I think it's a wonderful platform. I'm just never really there. So I am in private practice. My office is located in Hazelwood, but I have been doing telehealth, virtual sessions since the pandemic started. So as far as reaching me, I'll give that information to Charlene so she can post, because I have nothing for social media. My website has been in production for a while, and this is making me just realize, like, really, Danielle, you really need to get that finished. So I'll have some information for her to share on all the outlets that she mentioned.
Yes, I am in private practice and in the process of restructuring and rebranding. Soon I will be known as Making All Things New Counseling, LLC. For now, I can be reached on Facebook, and that handle would be PoetQ. I can be reached on Twitter by my surname, Tessie Amos III. Charlene will have links to everything that I have so that I can be easily reached and you guys can find me where you want to find me.
Thank you. I appreciate both of you. I've been chatting with Dr. Danielle Frazier, and Mr. Tessie Amos III. My name is Charlene Ketchum, and this is On Her Terms. Until next time, thank you.